I've been a nurse, and now I'm a gardener. And I'll tell you something, those two things are not as different as they sound. Out here in Oregon, where the summers turn damp and the evenings get thick, mosquitoes are not a small problem. You plan a nice evening outside, and within 4 minutes of stepping off the porch, you're back inside. Every single time. Here's the thing nobody tells you. The plants people say repel mosquitoes. Most of them don't work. Not sitting in a pot. Not just growing in the ground. People plant lavender along the fence, put basil by the back door, and they're still getting bitten. And they blame the plant. But that's not the right conclusion. And that's not the plant's fault. It's ours. We're using them completely wrong. Every one of these plants keeps its chemistry locked up, sealed behind tiny cell walls like little jars with the lid screwed on tight. Until you break that seal, the mosquito doesn't smell a thing. It's the equivalent of leaving matches in the box and wondering why you're cold. Today, I'm walking you through 5 plants that evidence supports for mosquito deterrence, and the exact activation protocol for each one. Number 3 surprised me. It grows like a weed because it is one, and preliminary research suggests it outperforms some synthetic repellents in controlled conditions. Most people yank it out every spring. Lemon balm, Melissa officinalis. I have it growing in 3 different spots on my property, and honestly, it gets away from me every summer if I'm not paying attention. It spreads the way good things tend to, enthusiastically and without asking permission. I planted one small cutting near the back fence about 4 years ago. It's now about 3 feet across and trying to negotiate with the oregano for more territory. Most people know lemon balm as a tea herb, something for stress, something for sleep, which is all true, but what it also contains is a compound called citronellal, and that word probably sounds familiar to you. It's the same family of chemistry that's in citronella candles. Now, citronella candles have a somewhat mixed reputation, and that's fair, because they're often used incorrectly too, placed too far away and in open air where the concentration dissipates before it reaches anyone. The chemistry itself, though, is genuinely documented to have an effect. And lemon balm carries it naturally in the leaf, growing right there in your garden. Think of the leaf like a tiny perfume bottle. The scent, the repellent chemistry, is sealed inside these microscopic chambers on the leaf surface. Little bubbles of oil, if you will. Until those bubbles get broken, the smell doesn't go anywhere. The mosquito doesn't know you're there. You can stand next to a lemon balm plant all evening and get bitten anyway. Not because the plant failed you, but because you never opened the bottle. Now, and this is what the research actually shows, lemon balm's volatile oils, primarily citronellal and geraniol, have been documented in ethnobotanical and laboratory studies to interfere with the mosquito's host detection chemistry. Mosquitoes use a whole basket of signals to find us: warmth, movement, the smell of our skin, the carbon dioxide from our breath. These compounds, when active and concentrated enough, muddy that basket considerably. They make it harder for the insect to lock onto a target. It's not that the mosquito becomes physically incapable of approaching. It's that the signal gets scrambled enough that it doesn't bother trying. Preliminary observations also suggest a 10% concentration of lemon balm. Essential oil applies comparably to lower concentrations of DEET in short exposure field studies. That's not a replacement, let me be clear about that, but it's not nothing either. For a 20-minute stretch of garden work, for sitting on the porch with the grandchildren, for watching the sun go down over the beds, it handles the job well enough that I haven't reached for a spray can in 3 summers. All right, here's the protocol. It's simple. You don't need a still or a laboratory. You need your hands in about 3 minutes. Step 1, pick yourself a generous handful of fresh lemon balm. I'd say at least 15 to 20 full leaves, maybe a good fistful. You want mature leaves, not the tender new growth at the tips. The older leaves have had more time to build up their oil reserves. Step 2, bruise them. Hard. I use the back of a wooden spoon right on the cutting board. You want to hear them crush. Hear that soft pop as the cell walls give way. Some folks use a mortar and pestle, which works beautifully. Now, the moment you bruise them, you'll smell it. That bright, lemony, almost medicinal smell? That's the chemistry releasing. That's what does the work. Step 3, take those bruised leaves and rub them directly onto your skin, forearms, back of the neck, the ankles. Let the oil transfer directly. Now, I'll say what I always say. Do a small patch test first, because some folks have sensitive skin, and the oils in any plant can cause a reaction in certain individuals. That's just good nursing habit. The effect, according to what evidence we have, runs for roughly 30 to 60 minutes in outdoor conditions before you'd want to reapply. It's not forever, but for a garden evening, it handles it, and it smells considerably better than anything in a spray can, I'll tell you that much. I want to talk about catnip for a moment, and I want you to set aside every association you have with it, because what the research says about this plant and mosquitoes is something that genuinely caught my attention when I first came across it. Most people think of catnip as a cat toy, a joke plant, something you grow if you've got a tabby that needs entertaining. I get that, but there is a serious body of scientific interest in this plant that goes back over 20 years and keeps producing results. Back in 2001, a research team out of Iowa State University's Department of Entomology found that nepetalactone, the compound that makes cats absolutely lose their minds, was, in preliminary laboratory testing, roughly 10 times more effective at deterring mosquitoes than DEET at equivalent concentrations. 10 times. Now, and I want to be careful here, that was controlled laboratory data using a static air chamber, not a field trial on human skin. Field performance is always more complicated, but it was enough to prompt a whole wave of follow-up research, including patent applications and further studies on nepetalactone isomers that continued into the 2000s. What makes catnip interesting from a chemistry standpoint, and I'll put this in plain language, is that nepetalactone works not by tricking the mosquito with a smell it associates with something else, but by acting as a direct irritant. A 2021 study published in the journal Current Biology out of Johns Hopkins found that nepetalactone activates a pain and irritant receptor in the mosquito's nervous system called TRPA1. Think of it like this. For us, that receptor fires when we touch something that burns or stings. A hot pan, a nettle leaf, raw chili on the fingers. For the mosquito, nepetalactone triggers that same alarm without any physical contact at all. It doesn't smell danger, it feels it, and it leaves. That distinction matters, because it means the mechanism isn't purely about overwhelming the mosquito's sense of smell. It's triggering something closer to a pain response, which explains, at least in part, why the compound performs so unusually well at relatively low concentrations. The plant grows freely out here, almost invasively freely. I've got a patch near the back gate that I do almost nothing with, and the mosquito pressure near that area does seem noticeably lower on evenings when I've been working there and inevitably brushed against it. Now, I'm a nurse, not a researcher, so I won't put more weight on personal observation than it deserves. But I notice it. I notice it every summer, and I've started to notice it intentionally rather than by accident. The key distinction, and this is the whole point, is that catnip growing passively in the ground produces almost no airborne nepetalactone. The compound needs heat or physical disruption to volatilize, to become airborne, to do anything. A pot of undisturbed catnip on your porch is decorative. A pot of bruised, simmered, or warmed catnip on your porch is a different proposition entirely. For catnip, my preferred activation method is a simple simmer. It takes about 10 minutes and turns the whole back porch into what I can only describe as a very polite mosquito barrier. Take a good 2 to 3 cups of fresh catnip, stems and all, and place them in a small pot with about 2 cups of water. That's roughly 475 milliliters, for those of you measuring in metric. Bring it to a gentle simmer, not a rolling boil. Gentle. A hard boil drives the volatile oils out too fast. You want a slow release. Let it simmer for 8 to 10 minutes, then carry that pot, carefully now, to wherever you're sitting outside. Set it near you. As it cools, it releases the nepetalactone into the air around the area. It won't cover a whole acre, but a table, a porch, a reading nook, evidence suggests it changes the local chemistry enough to matter. You can also dry and bundle catnip into small sachets for window ledges and doorways. Dried catnip releases less volatile chemistry than fresh, but in confined spaces, a porch, a screened room, it provides a background level of deterrence. Think of it as the quiet version of the same conversation. I'll admit that when I first started researching this one, I expected it to be the weakest entry on the list. Basil is so deeply a kitchen herb in my mind. It belongs on tomatoes, in pasta, in the garden as something beautiful, that I wasn't really expecting it to hold its own against mosquitoes. I was wrong, and I want to tell you exactly why, because the reason is more interesting than I anticipated. Basil contains a complex blend of volatile oils, linalool, estragol, and eugenol being the primary players. Together, these create what researchers describe as a multi-compound repellent profile. What that means in plain language, mosquitoes don't just dislike one thing about basil. They dislike several things simultaneously. It's like a combination lock they can't figure out. Most synthetic repellents work on a single mechanism. They block one specific sensor. Basil hits several at once, from different chemical directions. Eugenol is worth a particular mention. It's the same compound responsible for the characteristic smell of cloves, and it has a long history in dentistry as a mild anesthetic and antiseptic. When it's present on the skin surface in sufficient concentration, it appears to interfere with the mosquito's contact sensing chemistry, the system the insect uses when it lands and assesses whether to bite. So basil isn't just working at a distance. It may be providing a secondary line of defense, even if the insect gets close. Multiple documented laboratory studies have found that basil essential oil demonstrates repellent activity against Aedes aegypti mosquitoes, the species most associated with disease transmission in warmer climates, with effects observed at relatively low concentrations. The compounds primarily responsible appear to be linalool and estragol, which together interfere with the mosquito's ability to navigate toward a host. The mosquitoes simply can't read the room. Here's the thing that most people don't know about basil as a mosquito tool, and this one's useful. Unlike lemon balm or catnip, basil releases a small but measurable level of volatile oils even from intact leaves when temperatures are high. A pot of it in direct afternoon sun on a hot porch will release some chemistry without you doing a single thing. It's not the most powerful delivery method, but it's the laziest. And sometimes that's exactly right. On the days when I'm just sitting out there reading and don't feel like doing any prep work, 2 or 3 pots of basil in the afternoon sun and the residual effect of whatever I was wearing on my hands from lunch. That's often enough for a quiet hour outside. Method 1. Placement. Put your basil pots in direct afternoon sun on your porch or near your outdoor seating area. The heat does a small amount of work for you. It encourages passive release of those volatile oils. 2 or 3 full-size pots close to where people sit can create a background deterrent effect. Method 2. The direct rub. Pick 6 to 8 large basil leaves. I like the big Italian variety for this. They have more surface area and more oil to give. Roll them hard between your palms until they're almost paste-like and the oils transfer to your hands. Then rub onto pulse points and exposed skin. Behind the knees, the wrists, the collar of your shirt. Reapply every 45 minutes or so. There's a third option I use in the kitchen when the windows are open on a summer evening. I'll tear a bunch of fresh basil leaves and leave them spread across a small wooden board near the window. As they warm and dry slightly, they release. It fills the room with something that smells considerably better than a candle and does a decent job discouraging anything that's found its way inside. Lavender is probably the most well-known plant on this list, and that familiarity, I think, is actually a problem. Because when something is well-known, people assume they're already using it correctly. They plant it, they think they're protected, and then they wonder why the mosquitoes don't care. I've had this exact conversation at least a dozen times at the farmer's market. But I have lavender along the whole back fence, and I always have to gently deliver the same news. Lavender's primary repellent compounds are linalool and linalool acetate. These are the same chemistry behind much of the lavender essential oil industry, which is, incidentally, a billion-dollar global industry specifically because these compounds are so biologically active across such a wide range of applications. In botanical studies, linalool has been observed to interfere with mosquito flight orientation. Essentially, it disrupts their internal GPS. They get confused about which direction is toward you. Now, linalool also appears in basil, as we mentioned, but lavender carries it at far higher concentrations in the flower spike, particularly at the point of full bloom. That concentration difference matters enormously for practical use. Now, here is something that genuinely surprised me when I looked into the research. Lavender, more than almost any other plant on this list, retains a meaningful portion of its repellent chemistry when dried. The linalool doesn't fully dissipate on drying, the way some more volatile compounds do in other herbs. Citronellol, for example, the key compound in lemon balm, degrades quite significantly through the drying process, but linalool is more stable. It binds to the plant material differently and holds on. That means lavender is one of the very few plants where dried bundles actually do something. In a small, enclosed space, the evidence is there. That said, and I want to make this point clearly, a dried lavender sachet in a 2,000 square foot backyard is not going to do much. The chemistry needs to be concentrated enough to reach the mosquito's olfactory system. Context matters enormously here. Enclosed porch? Yes. Screened-in room? Absolutely. Open yard with a summer breeze? You'll need to be more active about it. The rule of thumb I use is this: if you can smell the lavender yourself without pressing your nose to it, there's enough volatilized chemistry in that space to matter. If you have to work to find the scent, so does the mosquito, and it won't bother. 2 protocols. First, the fresh bundle. Cut a good armful of lavender, 20 stems or more, tie it together, and place it within arm's reach of where you're sitting. Before you settle in, bruise the flower spikes between your palms a few times. That's your activation. The linalool releases immediately, and you've got roughly 45 minutes of local deterrence. Second, the smoke method. If you've got a fire pit going, throw a dry bundle of lavender directly onto the heat. It smolders, releases linalool into the air with the airflow, and mosquito activity downwind drops noticeably. Add more every 20 minutes or so. An old neighbor of mine who'd grown up in the south of France swore by this. And honestly, on a summer evening around a fire, it's one of the more pleasant solutions I know of. Rosemary is the one I want to spend the most time on, because I think it's the most underrated plant for outdoor living of everything on this list, and the most misunderstood. Out here, my rosemary grows almost like a shrub. It's hardy, it doesn't fuss, and it smells, well, it smells like everything good about a kitchen and a forest at the same time. The way the Creator put that scent into a plant that practically takes care of itself, I find that quietly remarkable. 3 winters ago, we had a stretch of hard frost that took out a lot of my more delicate herbs. The rosemary? Barely noticed. It came back fuller than it was before. There's something to be said for a plant that doesn't need coddling. The primary repellent chemistry in rosemary is camphor. 1,8-cineol, and alpha-pinene. Let me translate those. Camphor is the same compound in the old vapor rubs our grandmothers used to put on our chest. You know the smell. Sharp, medicinal, penetrating. Even a trace of it in the air registers immediately. 1,8-cineol is what gives eucalyptus that clearing, almost cool scent. It's used in respiratory preparation specifically because it moves through air easily and interacts with mucous membranes. And alpha-pinene is one of the main things you're smelling when you walk through a pine forest. All 3 together in rosemary's needle. 3 different volatile compounds with 3 different molecular shapes, all occupying the air around the plant simultaneously once you activate it. What the evidence shows, from ethnopharmacological documentation and controlled laboratory observations, is that rosemary's combination of compounds creates what I'd call a scent wall. It doesn't just confuse one part of a mosquito's detection system, it floods it, like trying to have a conversation in a room where every radio is playing something different at full volume. The signal gets lost. Research published in Pest Management Science by Tak and Isman in 2016 specifically identified the synergistic relationship between 1,8-cineol and camphor. The 2 compounds don't just add to each other's effect, they multiply it. 1 + 1 equals considerably more than 2, in this case. That's the kind of compound relationship that makes a plant punch well above its weight. And here's the practical piece I want to make sure you take with you. With rosemary, there are 2 meaningfully different ways to activate it, and they produce different durations of effect. There's a fast method and a slow method. The slow method takes about 30 minutes to prepare, But in a localized outdoor area, it creates a sustained release of those volatile compounds for a good stretch of the evening. That changes how you plan your outdoor time. You're not reapplying every 40 minutes. You're setting it up once and sitting in it. 2 protocols. The fast one first. Pick 6 to 8 rosemary sprigs, press them firmly between your palms and roll for 30 seconds until your hands smell unmistakably of rosemary and feel slightly oily. Rub that directly onto exposed skin. The camphor transfers well and holds for about 30 to 45 minutes before you'd want to reapply. The slow method. Tie a dense bundle of rosemary, a fistful at minimum, and set it at the edge of a fire pit, or on very low grill heat about 20 minutes before you go outside. Enough to warm it, not burn it. As it heats slowly, it releases camphor and the other volatile compounds in a long, steady exhale, rather than a quick burst. Downwind of that, you're creating a sustained deterrent zone for a good stretch of the evening. I've had real good summer evenings under that rosemary smoke. So, 5 plants. All of them are probably available within 20 minutes of wherever you're sitting right now, at a garden center, a grocery store, or quite possibly already in your garden without you knowing what you had. A lot of people watching this will already own 3 or 4 of them. They just haven't been using them right. Lemon balm. Crush the leaves, rub them on. Catnip, simmer it. Basil, heat it in sun, or bruise and apply. Lavender, bundle it fresh, burn it dry. Rosemary, rub it fast or slow burn it for the long evening. The thing I want you to take away from today, the one thing, is this. These plants aren't passive. They're not decorative mosquito guards that do the work by existing. They're tools, and like any tool, they work when you use them correctly. A hammer doesn't drive nails by sitting in the toolbox. Neither does a lemon balm plant by sitting in a pot. I also want to say something about patience. The first time you try these methods, you might not get it perfect. Maybe you don't crush enough leaves, or the catnip simmer runs a little hot. Or you forget to reapply the rosemary rub after 40 minutes and get a bite on the ankle. That's fine. That's how it works with any practical skill. You learn the rhythm of it over a season. By summer's end, most people find it second nature. They step outside, they reach for the lavender or the lemon balm, and it's as automatic as grabbing a sweater when there's a chill. One more thing I'll say, and this applies to every herb on this list, not just these 5. The plants in your garden are not inert. They're not decorations. They are living chemical laboratories, working constantly, producing compounds that have been refined by millions of years of survival pressure, compounds that were solving problems long before we had names for the problems they were solving. That's not mysticism, that's botany, and I think there is something genuinely humbling about learning to work with that chemistry, rather than reaching past it for something synthetic every time. Now, I want to be fair with you. None of these are absolute guarantees. If you're in a heavily infested area, in genuine mosquito-borne disease territory, please use every precaution available to you. That includes what your doctor recommends. What I'm offering today is what the evidence supports for general outdoor wellness and everyday deterrence. That's the lane I try to stay in. I'm a nurse, I believe in evidence, and I believe in the garden. Those 2 things don't have to be in opposition. Before I let you go, I've got a question for the garden fence, if you'll humor me. When it comes to catnip's nepetalactone, the compound we discussed, the debate in the research community is whether the repellent effect works primarily through olfactory blocking, contact avoidance, or both simultaneously. I have my own working theory based on what I observe out here, but I genuinely want to know. What do you think the primary mechanism is, based on what you've read or experienced? Leave it in the comments. I read everyone, and a good discussion down there helps other folks learn too. If today's video gave you something useful, something you'll actually take out to your porch and try this weekend, please consider hitting that subscribe button. There are more plants, more protocols, more of what the garden has to offer. I add to it every week, and I'd love for you to be part of that. I'm Clara. God bless you, friends. Go enjoy that garden, and may the Lord keep every one of you healthy, comfortable, and mosquito-free this season.